All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. A tiny island nation decides to take on two of Europe's biggest powers. But not on some battlefield. No, this fight is happening in the highest court on the entire planet. This is the incredible, true story of how a fight over fish spiraled into a massive legal showdown at the International Court of Justice. And how do we know all this? Well, because we have the actual documents. It all kicks off right here, with a cover page for all the official letters. And look, these aren't just dusty old papers. These are the first shots being fired in a legal war. Every single word, every sentence is a calculated move in a game of international chess with incredibly high stakes. So how did we even get here? Well, it all started when two of Europe's most powerful countries decided, you know what? It's time to drag Iceland to court. And things moved fast. On April 14, 1972, the UK files its case. Barely a month later, West Germany does the exact same thing. And by July, the UK is already pushing for the court to take emergency action. We're talking about two economic giants using the full power of international law against one very small nation.
Okay, before we go any further, we have to talk about this one key word, jurisdiction. It's basically the court's official power to even hear a case. I mean, without it, a court has no authority at all. And this one idea, jurisdiction, is about to become the central battleground for this entire fight. So, the whole argument from the UK and Germany boiled down to this. They said a deal they all made way back in 1961, this formal exchange of notes, explicitly gave the court jurisdiction. So their case wasn't really about the fish. Not at first. It was about procedure. They're basically saying, hey, we all signed this thing, and it says you have to show up to court, period. And this was it. The UK's entire case was hanging on these few lines from an agreement that was already a decade old. In fact, Iceland's own response letter quotes the UK's application, which just shows you how important this single point was. For the UK, it was totally open and shut. But Iceland saw things very, very differently.
Iceland's response was, well, it was not what anyone was expecting. It was direct, it was powerful, and it was basically a flat-out rejection of the whole thing. First off, Iceland came out swinging, saying that the original 1961 agreement was totally invalid. Why? Because they claimed they were forced to sign it under duress, with the British Royal Navy literally breathing down their necks during the last Cod War. They were saying, that deal doesn't count, we were pushed into it, and it was never supposed to be forever. And then they hit him with point number 2. The world had changed. The fishing grounds, they argued, were being absolutely plundered. This ever-increasing exploitation, as they put it, created a completely new situation that made that old 1961 agreement totally irrelevant. And this right here is the heart of it all. For Iceland, this wasn't about some legal technicality. This was about survival. That phrase, the vital interests of the people of Iceland, changes everything. They're not just arguing about a contract, they're arguing for their future. So, they laid out their case. The agreement was forced on them, it was outdated, and following it threatened their very existence. And from there, they came to a conclusion that was just stunning. They decided they were just going to ignore the world's highest court. And here is the bombshell, this one sentence. By refusing to appoint an agent, that's a legal representative, Iceland was formally boycotting the entire process. It's like being sued and telling the judge, yeah, I'm not even going to show up. They were challenging the court's authority over a sovereign nation. So you can imagine, this created a pretty wild situation for the International Court of Justice. I mean, what do you do when the defendant just refuses to show up? Well, welcome to the case of the empty chair. And just look at this on every single critical point. The two sides were complete opposites. The UK and Germany are saying the agreement is valid, the court has power, let's go. And Iceland is saying the agreement is dead, the court has no power, and we're not coming. They were at a total, complete standstill. But did that stop the UK and Germany? Not a chance. They formally asked the court to do something pretty remarkable. Just continue the case anyway. They argued that the court's own rulebook actually has a plan for when one side just doesn't show up. And here it is, right there in black and white. The UK's agent writes to the court basically saying they maintain their rights and are formally requesting the court to continue. They were doubling down, essentially forcing the court to make a decision about its own power.
So the stage is set for this unbelievable legal drama. You've got the court, you've got two plaintiffs who are ready to go, and you have one very, very empty defendant's chair. What on earth could happen next?
Well, the UK and Germany knew that a full case could drag on for years, so they played their next card. They filed an emergency request for something called interim measures of protection. Basically, they wanted the court to do something right now. So, what are these interim measures? Think of it like a legal emergency break. It's a temporary order, kind of like an injunction, that the court can issue to just freeze everything and stop one side from causing damage while the bigger case is being sorted out. It's a really powerful tool, and the UK was ready to use it. And their request was laser-focused. They asked the court to issue an immediate order, telling Iceland to stop its plan to expand its fishing limits. This put the court in a totally impossible spot. Either issue an order that might just be ignored, or do nothing and look completely powerless. Which brings us to this fundamental question that the whole case just blows wide open. What really is the power of international law? Can a court, even the highest court in the world, force a nation to do something it doesn't want to do, especially when that nation won't even pick up the phone? And in the end, it leaves us with an even bigger, more profound question. This was never just about fish. It was a massive collision between two huge ideas. What happens when the survival of a nation, their vital interests, runs headfirst into the established rules of international law? That's the real question at the heart of the Cod War. And you know what? It's a question we're still wrestling with today.